Some homes rise with beauty, others with light, but the homes that endure quietly, powerfully, generation after generation are the ones backed by something deeper. Not from the front, not from the decor, not from the bank account, but from the unseen rear, where roots grip the earth, where shadows stretch longest, and where your energy either stabilizes or silently unravels. Behind the house, in that quiet space most people ignore, the future of a family is held. Not just in soil and plants, but in karma, in fate, in the spiritual architecture that governs what stays and what slips away. In both Feng Shui and Buddhist cosmology, the rear of your home isn't just the backyard, it's the spine of your energetic body. It holds everything the front cannot. It absorbs, supports, stabilizes. Just like the human body collapses without a strong back, your household's long-term fortune falters when this rear mountain is weak, exposed, or forgotten. The greatest mistake most homeowners make, they decorate the front and leave the back defenseless, and then wonder why good things don't stay. In today's video, I won't give you a random list of lucky trees or popular landscape trends. That's not what we do here, Tuan. Instead, I'm going to show you 5 very specific tree placements, each selected through generations of wisdom, that can silently reshape the fortune of your household. These trees are not ornaments. They are guardians. They are living principles of endurance, of karmic reinforcement, of wealth that doesn't just arrive, but stays. One of them, surprisingly, was recommended to a billionaire you've definitely heard of, not by a business coach, but by a Japanese garden master, because his home's rear energy was bleeding. The change was subtle, the results were not. I'll share that story with you shortly. But first, before we walk into the sacred landscape together, I want to ask something simple. If this video gives you even one moment of insight, if it helps you understand your space differently, or opens your mind to a way of living more aligned with ancestral wisdom, then I invite you to support this channel. A single like, a share, or a quick subscribe helps me reach the next milestone, 2,000 followers. But more importantly, it tells the platform that this kind of grounded, ancient meets modern knowledge deserves to be heard. So take that small action now if you feel called to. And I'll take a moment here to thank you for walking this path with me. Because where we're going next, into the energetic blueprint of your backyard, it may change the way you see your home forever. It may explain why some families seem to rise and stay secure across generations, while others succeed briefly but fall again and again. You're about to discover that the rear of your home is not an afterthought. It is a karmic amplifier. And each tree you place there is not simply rooted in earth, but rooted in intention. So now let's begin, not with superstition or magic, but with structure and alignment. The first tree we'll explore today is one that bends without breaking, grows fast but stays hollow, and quietly filters harsh winds into protective calm. It has been revered in both temple gardens and royal courtyards for centuries. Its name is bamboo, and its presence behind your home may be the difference between a fortune that scatters and one that stays. Rear energy, the most ignored yet most important zone. The most misunderstood part of any home is not the entrance, the kitchen, or the money corner. It is the rear, the part behind the home that most people never truly consider. They may clean it, they may landscape it for show, but they rarely understand what it represents energetically. In Feng Shui, this space holds the energy of the black tortoise, one of the 4 celestial animals, and a critical anchor for the stability of the entire home. The black tortoise is not flashy. It does not bring immediate attention like the red phoenix at the front or the green dragon on the left. But what it provides is far more enduring. It gives the household a strong spiritual and energetic spine. Support that doesn't call attention to itself, but without which everything begins to collapse in ways you can't quite explain. The rear of the house represents the invisible strength. It is the backbone, the mountain, the quiet guardian. The black tortoise holds the home steady through cycles of fortune, ensuring that what enters from the front, be it money, health, or opportunity, can actually stay, integrate, and build. A home without rear support might appear successful on the outside, but behind closed doors, there's often instability. Money that comes in and goes out just as quickly, careers that rise and plateau, relationships that feel emotionally fragile even when externally perfect. That's because the structure has no spiritual anchoring, no internal gravity, no field of containment. In Buddhist cosmology, this exact concept is mirrored in the notion of alaya vijnana, the eighth consciousness, also called the storehouse consciousness. According to Yogacara Buddhist theory, this is the part of our mind that stores all karmic seeds, all latent tendencies, all imprints from lifetimes past and present. It does not act like the conscious mind. It does not think or judge or analyze. It simply holds. It is always present, always receiving, and always ready to ripen those karmic imprints into experiences, depending on the right causes and conditions. When your physical environment mirrors this metaphysical truth, when the back of your home is grounded, stable, protected, you align your external structure with this internal cosmology. You provide your life with the kind of unseen support that allows dormant karmic goodness to ripen, often in ways that appear as sudden breakthroughs, long-awaited luck, or the resolution of things that have remained stuck for years. But if the rear of your home is exposed, weak, or energetically chaotic, your karmic field becomes spiritually top-heavy. The energy at the front, the entrance, the fame area, the wealth star, becomes exaggerated. It glows briefly but has nothing to root into. It creates intensity without longevity. And over time, this leads to a cycle of burnout, financial instability, emotional friction, and a life path that feels like it keeps resetting itself without actually evolving. Let's take a closer look at what this actually means in practice. A home with an unstable rear might manifest its imbalance in small, unnoticed ways. Maybe the family members feel exhausted more often than they should. Maybe arguments flare up that have no real cause, only to die down as quickly as they appeared. Perhaps business opportunities keep showing up, but fall apart during the follow-through phase. You might even notice that every time you feel like you're making progress, financially, professionally, or emotionally, something outside your control causes a setback. People often blame themselves, thinking they lack discipline, timing, or even luck. But more often than not, what they're missing is this foundational support from behind. It's not their fault, it's structural. Their space is not designed to hold their progress, and so progress becomes unsustainable. This is why in traditional Feng Shui, master practitioners always start with assessing not what's entering the home, but what's holding it up. They look at the landscape behind the house. Is there a wall, a hill, a grove of trees? Or is it open, chaotic, vulnerable to the wind? In classical theory, the black tortoise should be higher than the front of the house, providing energetic containment and spiritual backing. In modern settings, this can be mimicked with carefully planted trees, raised earth, stone walls, or even tall fences. But it must be intentional. It must be designed to hold energy. Similarly, in the Buddhist perspective, if the storehouse consciousness is constantly bombarded by unfiltered mental impressions, negative thought patterns, unresolved fears, external noise, it cannot properly ripen wholesome karma. It becomes oversaturated. The seeds that could bring mindfulness or peace become buried beneath layers of distraction and unprocessed emotion. In the same way, when the rear of a house is exposed to harsh wind, noise, or lack of form, the energetic field becomes porous. Opportunities fall through. Stability dissolves. People find themselves asking, why do I keep starting over? And the answer is because there's nothing behind you to hold what you've built. This is where the planting of trees becomes more than just landscaping. It becomes a spiritual act. The trees you plant behind your home are not decorative. They are anchors. Each branch filters energy. Each root holds karma. Each leaf whispers to the space around it. Stay here, be held, grow slowly. A tree behind your home serves the same function as the unconscious part of your own being. It does not speak. It does not perform, but it watches, it absorbs, it supports. And when chosen wisely, according to both elemental balance and spiritual resonance, it can correct decades of energetic imbalance. It can quietly shift the rhythm of a home. It can restore the spine of a household that never understood why it kept bending under invisible pressure. And the best part, you don't need dozens of them. One or two placed with thought, chosen with alignment, can do more for your life than any new couch, painting, or front door charm. They work slowly, patiently, day after day, holding what is too sacred to be seen and too powerful to be ignored. There is also a deeper psychological dimension to all of this. When you turn your attention to the back of your home, when you plant with care, tend with reverence, and design with depth, you send a subtle message to your subconscious mind. I am supported, I am grounded, I am safe to grow. That message changes the way you show up in the world. You walk differently, you choose differently, you invest, speak, and rest from a different inner place. You stop overreaching, you stop compensating. You allow wealth to come not because you're chasing it, but because your life finally knows how to hold it. In the Buddhist teachings, there's a saying, the fruit does not appear because you want it. It appears because the ground has been cultivated. The rear of your house is that ground. If it is neglected, no amount of wishing or working will create lasting change. But if it is nourished, shaped, and protected, then what follows? Wealth, clarity, emotional peace becomes not a miracle, but a natural consequence of structural alignment. So the next time you step into your backyard, don't just look at what's growing. Ask yourself, is this space holding my family's future or slowly leaking it? Is this space calming the karmic winds or stirring them? Is this space structured for show or for soul? And more importantly, what needs to be planted here, not just to beautify the land, but to anchor the legacy? The answer to those questions may not be immediate, but when you begin to ask them, your home begins to answer. And that is the first step toward real wealth, not the kind that comes and goes, but the kind that roots itself in silence, grows in peace, and stays across generations. The 5 trees that strengthen karma and wealth stability. Icon Tree 1, Bay Laurel, the tree of quiet wisdom. Among the many trees that hold symbolic and energetic weight in both Eastern philosophy and practical land harmonization, Bay Laurel stands alone in a particular kind of silence. It does not shout for attention. It does not bloom with dramatic flowers or cast sprawling shadows like a fig or banana tree. And yet, its presence, firm, fragrant, and refined, whispers wisdom into the soil and offers clarity to those whose paths have grown murky. In ancient times, it was not used merely as decoration. It crowned the heads of philosophers, poets, and victors, not as a trophy, but as a symbol of inner alignment. In Feng Shui, Bay Laurel embodies the element of wood and aligns perfectly with the Sun position in the rear left quadrant of the home, which governs wealth, influence, and the capacity for growth. But unlike aggressive growth that overextends and collapses, Laurel encourages the type of growth that is measured, fees, and deeply rooted. It represents wealth that accumulates through focus, integrity, and clarity of purpose. Spiritually, it harmonizes with the Buddhist concept of right view, the first of the Noble Eightfold Path, a teaching that suggests all progress must begin with clear understanding, with the ability to see things as they are, unobstructed by delusion, confusion, or scattered desires. For households that feel themselves constantly chasing opportunities but never quite catching them, for individuals who launch ideas but struggle to complete them, who sense they have potential but find themselves paralyzed by doubt, distraction, or misalignment, the bay laurel offers more than leafy shade. It offers recalibration. It holds a mirror to the chaos of indecision and gently pushes the energetic field back toward mental order. In practical terms, planting this tree in the rear left section of your property creates a gravitational pull toward inner discipline. Unlike trees that inspire creative spontaneity or emotional healing, laurel does something more precise. It sharpens. Its evergreen leaves, when bruised, release a scent that is simultaneously grounding and elevating. Its structure, upright, elegant, contained, becomes a physical metaphor for the mental posture one must adopt to move forward without wasting energy. And this is no coincidence. Plants in classical Feng Shui are not selected merely by their appearance, but by the story their form and function tell. Laurel's slow, upright growth pattern is one of purposeful ascension. It does not rush, it does not sprawl, and it never forgets its direction. In Buddhist terms, this is the embodiment of right view, not as a moral commandment, but as an energetic truth. Right view is not about believing the right things. It is about seeing with calm precision, choosing with intention, and acting with full presence. When you place a laurel in the correct rear left position of your home, you are anchoring this exact frequency into your domestic and karmic field. You are literally planting a guardian of discernment, but there is more to this than symbolic alignment. Let us consider the internal dynamics of the households that most benefit from laurel's presence. These are families or individuals who often begin things with fire but lack follow-through. The energy in such spaces is scattered, projects half-finished, decisions revisited, clarity at always just one insight away, but never stable enough to become action. This is often due not to laziness or incompetence, but to environmental noise. The space does not hold clarity because the structure itself does not encourage it. When a laurel is introduced to such a setting, particularly in the Zune area, its subtle but firm vibration gradually imposes discipline. It's not a harsh imposition. Rather, it's like a tuning fork for mental intention. One begins to notice thoughts becoming sharper, plans becoming cleaner, and progress emerging not from frantic effort, but from sustained clarity. There is a difference between ambition and direction. Laurel reminds the household of that difference. Historically, it is worth noting that in the Greco-Roman world, laurel was associated not with mindless victory, but with earned honor. The laurel wreaths were not given to those who merely won, but to those who embodied excellence with consistency and dignity. In China, although less famously used than bamboo or pine, laurel also holds a place in traditional gardens designed for scholars and poets. It was placed near walls, corners, and walkways not because of its ornamental beauty, but because its shape offered stability to the chi flow, guiding the walker, sharpening the air, holding the space in contemplative refinement. In a household context, laurel does something similar. It guides the flow of attention. It discourages distraction. It rewards those who are ready to stop reacting and start refining. This is why it is especially useful for people going through transition points. A student choosing their major, a business owner needing a pivot, a family moving into a new stage of their shared life. These moments are heavy with mental noise. And without right view, such transitions often default to hurried decisions. Laurel holds back the storm just long enough to see clearly. Now, placement is critical. The rear left section of the house, known as the Sun sector, is traditionally linked with wealth and influence and is governed by the wood element. Placing a wood-based tree like laurel here strengthens the area naturally. But it is important not to overload the space. Laurel does not want to be crowded. Do not plant it alongside thorny or heavy-rooted plants. Give it breathing room. Let it stand with dignity, because it teaches the same. Also, be cautious about over-pruning. Trimming the laurel too aggressively, especially from its top or main branches, symbolically cuts off your own intellectual current. Always prune lightly and from the base. This maintains its energetic integrity. And if you choose to plant it in a container instead of the ground, place that container on an elevated stone or platform. Do not let the laurel sit directly on concrete or cluttered ground. It prefers to be held with reverence. On a subtle level, those who live in homes with properly placed laurel trees often report a surprising shift in how they make decisions. They describe less mental fog, fewer detours, more moments of inner stillness before big moves. It is not that the tree itself is doing the thinking. It is that the tree stabilizes the atmosphere where clear thinking becomes possible. This is no different from how meditation halls are designed with geometry that induces quiet. Laurel arranges your external space so your internal voice can rise. It is the antidote to spiritual hurry. And for those on a Buddhist path, this is especially important. For what good is intention if it is not sharpened by understanding? What use is action if it is unexamined? Laurel does not make you moral, it makes you aware. It supports the kind of awareness that precedes all meaningful transformation. And in this way, it becomes not just a plant, but a silent teacher. One that will outlive most temporary trends, most ornamental fads, and most shallow attempts at Feng Shui fashion. It asks for patience, and in return, it offers vision. To those building a home for longevity, for legacy, for inward and outward success, not the kind that burns fast and fades, but the kind that holds across generations. Bay laurel is more than recommended. It is essential. It holds no superstition, but it holds discipline. It promises no magic, but it invites clarity. And for many, that is the true missing key. Not more opportunity, but more direction. And for those whose homes already have abundant opportunity, but lack cohesion, laurel becomes the thread that weaves everything back into form. So if you feel your home has passion, but no anchor, talent, but no path, or energy, but no channel, do not wait for clarity to arrive from the outside. Plant it, root it, let it grow in the rear left corner of your space. And then watch as your thoughts begin to follow its shape, slow, tall, and finally clear. Tree 2, banana tree, the absorber of scattered chi. In the hierarchy of landscape choices, few trees are as unfairly overlooked as the banana tree. To many, it appears too common, too tropical, too soft to be taken seriously. People often assume its purpose is decorative at best or agricultural at most. But in the spiritual architecture of Feng Shui and within the metaphysical framework of Buddhist understanding, the banana tree holds one of the most essential and underestimated energetic functions a home can receive. It absorbs scattered chi, not through force or resistance, not through rigid structure or commanding presence, but through softness, pliability, and unspoken grace. Its leaves are large, broad, and supple. So supple, in fact, that they bend under wind without tearing. They move with weather patterns without snapping. And in their very motion, they create a field of emotional and spiritual protection. This capacity to bend without breaking is not merely botanical, it is deeply symbolic. In Buddhist psychology, it reflects the principle of gentle persistence, of non-resistance to impermanence, of yielding to what is while remaining rooted in what endures. In a world that increasingly rewards hardness, the banana tree models a different kind of strength, the strength of soft containment. From a Feng Shui perspective, this tree is a balm for imbalance. It is ideal for homes with exposed rear areas, homes that sit on open land without structural backing, homes with rear-facing windows that look out onto busy streets, or properties where external noise, light, or chaotic motion bleeds into the inner sanctum of the family space. In such configurations, the home's energetic field is constantly disrupted. Qi flows in but cannot settle. Family members may sleep lightly, argue over small matters, experience sudden mood shifts, or feel as if they're never fully grounded in their own space. You'll often hear people in these homes say, "I can't think straight here," or "I love this house, but I never feel fully relaxed." They're not imagining it. Their home is lacking rear protection. The spiritual backbone is exposed. And when that happens, the household becomes like a body without kidneys. It cannot filter chaos. It cannot regulate emotional toxins. It cannot stabilize its own rhythms. This is where the banana tree performs its silent miracle. Placed carefully behind the home, particularly along exposed zones or places where external intrusion is most frequent, the banana tree operates as a soft wall of energetic filtration. It does not block energy. Blocking is what hard surfaces do. It filters it. It welcomes the wind but slows it down. It allows light but breaks the glare. It accepts the motion of the world and transforms it into calm breath within the household boundary. It does not resist the world. It softens its impact. And this is precisely why it holds such potency in Buddhist metaphysical symbolism. The teachings on equanimity, on the four Brahma Viharas, particularly the quality of upekkha, or serenity in the face of change, are embodied in this plant more clearly than in many others. Where firs stand firm and bamboo rises tall, the banana tree simply moves with the moment. And in its movement, it teaches. It reminds us that peace is not created through rigidity, but through the capacity to stay whole while everything around us shifts. For households that deal with emotional volatility, whether due to personal temperaments, unresolved karmic cycles, or environmental stressors, the banana tree provides a subtle antidote. Its large leaves catch emotional qi in the same way they catch light. They create shadow not as darkness, but as reprieve. In Buddhist temple gardens, the banana plant is often found in side courtyards or rear meditation paths, not in the front where ceremonial trees like pine or bodhi take precedence, but in the places where monks go to walk in solitude, to exhale what the world has layered onto their minds. Its presence is not loud. It does not claim significance, but its function is sacred. And that same function applies to your home. Whether you live in a modern villa or a small urban flat with a rear-facing balcony, the banana tree, when invited with reverence, becomes a gentle sentinel. It does not repel negativity with fire. It absorbs it like water. It takes the sharp edge off aggression. It breaks the rhythm of attack with a rhythm of sway. But don't mistake its softness for weakness. The banana plant is highly adaptive. It grows quickly. It propagates easily. It requires little attention, but responds to care with lushness and height. It is the embodiment of what in Buddhist philosophy is called karuna, the active compassion that nourishes without seeking reward. It does not demand, it gives. And this giving is not only visual or symbolic. On a tangible level, banana trees release moisture into the surrounding air, cool the microclimate around them, and create an environmental buffer that makes the entire backyard feel more restful, more private, more held. For families with young children, it is especially beneficial. Children often absorb emotional turbulence before adults are even aware of it. When the rear of the home is protected with banana trees, many parents report improved sleep, calmer behavior, and fewer sudden illnesses. This is not magic. It is ecology. It is energetic hygiene. And yet, even as it nourishes, the banana tree also teaches boundaries. Its structure reminds us that soft does not mean formless. Its leaves may move, but its stalk is firm. Its roots are shallow, yet widespread, holding the soil in a wide embrace. It knows its place. It does not invade, but it fills. It does not dominate, but it shelters. And this duality, soft above, steady below, is a master lesson in how to hold peace inside a turbulent world. From a placement perspective, banana trees should not be planted too close to the home's rear wall, as their roots expand outward and need breathing space. Instead, place them about 4 to 6 feet from the edge of the property line, ideally in clusters of 3 or 5. Odd numbers are more auspicious in Feng Shui. Do not plant them in lines like hedges. This interrupts the natural rhythm. Allow space between each plant for airflow and light diffusion. You are not building a wall, you are building a veil. Another important aspect of working with banana trees is understanding their relationship with water. They thrive in moist environments but hate water stagnation. Just like the mind, they need movement. Just like karma, they need flow. If the soil beneath them stays soggy, their base rots. If it dries out, their leaves curl and retreat. So keep them hydrated, but not soaked. This parallels Buddhist meditation. Let your awareness stay moist, alive, and adaptable, but not drowning in thought, not hardened by dryness. The tree will teach you if you watch it closely. It will show you when your environment is in balance and when it is gasping. One of the most remarkable testimonials about banana trees comes not from a mystic or monk, but from a Japanese architect designing spiritual retreat centers in the 1980s. In his journals, he noted that the only tree consistently able to withstand both tropical storms and inner courtyard energy needs in his buildings was the banana tree. It created neither too much upward fire nor excessive downward earth. It held space. It gave breath. It welcomed wind. And that is exactly what our homes need when life becomes fast, loud, and unpredictable. They need something that does not panic, something that absorbs, converts, and exudes calm. This is the banana tree's true gift. It does not push away what is difficult, it makes it livable. It invites it in and says, "Let me hold this for you, Huju. Let me catch this breeze, this sound, this unfinished thought." And in doing so, it protects not by building barriers, but by building space. Emotional space, energetic pause, the kind of pause in which reflection becomes possible, the kind of breath in which wisdom reemerges. So if your home backs onto a busy road, a noisy apartment complex, an alley filled with unpredictable motion, or if you simply feel that your rear energy has been exposed, raw, or unsettled, consider planting a banana tree, or several. Not because it is trendy, not because it grows fast, but because it brings something you cannot buy. Peace that holds, softness that protects, and a message that strength does not always need to shout. Sometimes it just needs to sway. Tree 3, almond tree, symbol of inner resilience. Among all the trees in a symbolic or energetic garden, the almond tree occupies a space of quiet fortitude, unassuming at first glance, yet layered with profound meaning once observed in its full cycle. Its most poetic gesture, the one most revered across both Eastern symbolism and subtle energetic practice, is that it blooms before winter has ended. At a time when most trees are still bare, waiting for clear warmth and undeniable signals of spring, the almond dares to blossom under cold skies. It risks showing beauty before safety. This act is not simply botanical, it is philosophical. It reflects a deeper spiritual metaphor: faith blooming before certainty, intention arising before proof, strength emerging not from perfect conditions, but from unwavering inner timing. In Buddhist thought, this is the seed of resilience. the capacity to rise without needing the world to confirm your readiness. And so in Feng Shui, the almond tree is seen as a powerful, energetic stabilizer for households undergoing transformation. It does not scream prosperity. It does not demand attention. It does something much rarer. It grounds purpose in the unseen center of will. This tree embodies the principle of tough inside, soft outside, a pattern echoed in the Bodhisattva ideal. The Bodhisattva in Mahayana Buddhism is not someone who escapes the world, but one who remains within it, cultivating compassion and wisdom simultaneously. Firm in purpose, gentle in action, clear in direction, fluid in delivery. The almond tree mirrors this temperament. Its wood is dense and strong. It can endure harsh climates, rocky soils, inconsistent rainfall. And yet, when it flowers, it does so with astonishing delicacy. Pale blossoms, almost translucent, emerge with a softness that belies the strength beneath. This dual nature, resilient core, gentle expression, is why it holds such value in households where clarity is needed during uncertain times. When a family is navigating a transition, a marriage beginning, a career shifting, a relocation pending, the energy inside the home can often feel pulled in opposite directions. Part of the household wants stability, another part wants movement. One person seeks structure, another seeks freedom. The energetic field becomes noisy, unclear, easily stirred by external influences. In such moments, decisions can turn reactive, emotions can grow volatile, and the home no longer feels like a container for the future. It becomes a battleground of diverging impulses. This is where the almond tree enters, not as an ornamental solution, but as a symbol of resolved intention. When planted behind the home, especially in the western or southwestern rear sectors, it introduces an energy of balanced directionality. It says to the household, grow now, even if the conditions are not yet ideal. Begin now, even if the finish line is not visible. Trust the season of your own soul. This energy is critical in moments where momentum is needed not through pressure, but through purpose. And this is not abstract. People living in homes with healthy, visible almond trees often report feeling more emotionally centered when making decisions. It is as if the tree itself becomes a mirror to the subconscious, reminding them of who they are beneath doubt, beneath fear, beneath noise. The almond's presence becomes a quiet teacher. You do not need to wait for external permission to begin. You simply need to root in what you already know is true, and from that rootedness, blossom. In a Feng Shui layout, the almond tree is especially effective for households that sit on transitional land, plots between hills and valleys, urban edges, or spaces where landforms shift direction. Such terrain often leads to unstable chi patterns, where energy enters with confusion or exits too quickly. The almond tree holds the edge. It anchors intention. It converts erratic environmental rhythm into a steady pulse of growth. But its position must be respected. It should never be forced into a corner or boxed in by heavier, more dominant trees. Almond thrives when it has space to breathe, to show its cycle. This tree is one of movement and stillness. It requires air. It teaches pacing. And that lesson extends directly into the way it reshapes household karma. In Buddhist metaphor, karma is not fate but momentum. What you set in motion with attention and repetition becomes a pattern. When that pattern is rooted in confusion, you get stuck. When it's rooted in clarity, you begin to move in a spiral of upward refinement. The almond tree assists in this karmic elevation by functioning as a decision anchor. When you pass it on your way to work, when you catch its shape in your window as you sip morning tea, when you water its roots as a weekly ritual, you are reminded of your own potential to act with elegance before circumstances appear safe. This is not spiritual bypassing. This is action without self-abandonment. The almond does not pretend winter is over. It simply meets winter with beauty. This subtle energetic stance, when mirrored by the household that lives beside it, becomes a foundation for long-term change. Moreover, this tree offers a stabilizing influence, not just for individuals, but for relationships. It's particularly valuable for newly married couples or families merging across generational or cultural lines. Where different values, languages, or traditions meet, there is always the potential for friction. Almond softens that friction, not by diluting difference, but by stabilizing the field in which difference exists. Its energy is not one of assimilation, but of integration. It allows contrast to be held in harmony. Just as its branches spread in multiple directions but feed from the same root, it teaches families to allow each member their path while remaining loyal to a shared purpose. This effect is subtle. You won't notice it in a day or a week, but over months the home begins to feel more settled. Arguments lose their edge. Conversations become more anchored. Decisions no longer ricochet between extremes, but find middle ground. This is what it means for a tree to guide a family, not through instruction, but through resonance. Planting the almond tree, therefore, should not be an afterthought. It should be a ceremonial act. You are not adding greenery, you are embedding a code into the land. This code says, here we begin with intention. Here we choose softness without losing strength. And to protect this code, the tree must be cared for properly. It needs well-drained soil, full sun, and moderate pruning after bloom. Never prune it during its flowering stage. That is its time of full expression, and interference during this cycle symbolically disrupts self-trust. Also, never plant it too close to buildings or walls. Its roots need freedom, not confinement. Think of it as a mentor. It stands nearby, never imposing, always present. In many traditional Asian homes, trees were chosen not for their yield, but for their narrative. The almond tree was rarely the first planted, but often the most treasured over time. It gained meaning slowly, as its cycles became part of the family's own rhythm. Children growing up near almond trees often develop deep emotional intelligence, not because the tree taught them, but because it held space for emotional complexity. It became a place where parents whispered difficult news, where teens sat with confusion, where elders took their evening walk and remembered lives already lived. The almond tree became the witness, and through witnessing, it became sacred. So if your life feels caught between seasons, between who you were and who you are becoming, if your home is full of hope but lacks direction, if your relationships are evolving but not yet settled, plant an almond tree behind your house. Let it be your first act of silent affirmation. Let it teach you to move without force, to root without needing full agreement from the world. And over time, you'll find that this small gesture, a tree planted not in urgency but in clarity, becomes the most enduring act of resilience you've ever made. Not because it changes everything instantly, but because it reminds you every day that growth begins before conditions are perfect, that inner resolve matters more than outer permission, and that a single act of aligned planting can shift the karma of an entire household, not with drama, but with grace. Tree 4, bamboo, resilience and structure. Of all the trees revered across centuries of spiritual design, none carries the dual signature of elegance and fortitude more gracefully than bamboo. It does not tower with might like a pine, nor boast with blooms like an orchid, yet it stands as one of the most spiritually respected symbols in both Feng Shui and Buddhist cultures. Bamboo is not only a plant, it is a statement. It is the physical embodiment of strength through humility, of structure without rigidity, of resilience balanced with receptivity. To see bamboo is to see the principle of uprightness made visible. Its stalks rise tall and unwavering, but never brittle. They bend in storms, but rarely break. This resilience is not an accident of nature. It is a design encoded with deep spiritual lessons. Its strength comes not from mass, but from form. Unlike hardwood trees with dense cores, bamboo is hollow, and in that hollowness lies its genius. Its openness gives it flexibility. Its emptiness gives it structure. In Buddhist teachings, emptiness, or shunyata, is not a void, but a space of infinite potential. Bamboo mirrors this teaching with every node and stalk. It shows us that what is empty is not useless. Rather, what is empty can endure what is full cannot. That's why in both monastic gardens and philosophical literature, bamboo is the metaphor for the ideal spiritual practitioner. Rooted, responsive, always growing but never grasping. In Feng Shui, bamboo carries a distinct practical application. It is used to block incoming sha qi, harsh or attacking energy that rushes toward a home due to environmental aggression, such as sharp edges, fast roads, or exposed rear positions. When the rear of a house is vulnerable, backing onto open fields, alleys, or architectural drop-offs, it becomes a leak point. Energy flows in too quickly and exits just as fast, unable to accumulate, settle, or integrate. Bamboo, when placed strategically along this exposed rear edge, functions like a spiritual sieve. It intercepts the rushing qi, filters it, and slows it down. Yet, unlike stone walls or rigid fencing, bamboo doesn't trap the energy, it allows it to breathe. In this way, it upholds one of Feng Shui's most delicate balances: the ability to protect without restricting, to absorb without hoarding. This is where bamboo's form becomes critical. It must not be planted densely like a hedge, which blocks energy and creates stagnation. Instead, it should be planted in staggered rows with enough space between the stalks to allow light and air to flow. Think of it as a living breath. Inhale, exhale, inhale. The goal is containment, not confinement. Beyond its protective function, bamboo brings a second gift, one often forgotten in modern interpretations. It enhances intellectual and creative energy. This quality is rooted in centuries of cultural symbolism. In Chinese culture, bamboo is one of the four gentlemen, alongside plum, orchid, and chrysanthemum, each representing a virtue. Bamboo represents the scholar, morally upright, intellectually curious, humble in strength. In ancient scholars' studios, bamboo was painted, carved, and grown not as decor, but as alignment. Its presence encouraged the flow of focused thought, the emergence of poetic insight, and the cultivation of disciplined imagination. In Buddhist monasteries, bamboo groves were often placed along the paths leading to scripture halls and meditation rooms. Walking through them was not only aesthetically pleasing, it prepared the mind. The gentle rustling of leaves, the filtered light dancing through the stalks, the sensation of passing through an ever-living corridor, all of it primed the mind to settle, to clarify, to receive wisdom. This is not metaphor. This is landscape as meditation. In your home, bamboo offers the same opportunity for writers, teachers, musicians, designers, for anyone whose vocation depends on sustained creative rhythm. The presence of bamboo along the rear of the home provides not only protection from distraction, but also a subtle sharpening of focus. It doesn't stimulate in the way a bright color or high contrast plant might. Instead, it refines. It strips away the unnecessary. It promotes order without demand. It reminds the household that real creativity flows not from chaos, but from clear and open structure. From the discipline of form comes the freedom of expression. Bamboo shows us this balance every day of its life. Even in its growth, it teaches us something sacred. Bamboo is among the fastest growing plants on Earth, sometimes shooting up several inches in a single day. But it does not grow chaotically. Each segment is measured. Each shoot grows upward in alignment. There is ambition, yes, but there is also order. There is hunger, but it is channeled. And this, more than anything, makes bamboo a model for households that want to grow not just fast, but well. There is a kind of energetic noise that arises in homes where ambition lacks structure. Ideas bloom but none complete. Projects launch but few land. Children jump from one interest to another without depth. Couples start conversations but never reach resolution. Money comes in but doesn't stay. These are not character flaws. They are environmental reflections. The space lacks rhythm. The energy lacks form. Bamboo corrects this, not with control, but with consistency. Its physical form introduces repetition. Its color, deep green, resonates with the wood element, stimulating healthy upward growth. But its hollowness, again, is key. It encourages the home to act without ego, to rise without rigidity, to move forward while remaining spacious. This is not decorative planting. This is structural therapy. And for those who fear that bamboo may be invasive or hard to manage, there is wisdom in the way you choose your species. Clumping bamboo, as opposed to running bamboo, is the preferred choice in Feng Shui landscaping. It grows in tight clusters, doesn't spread aggressively, and is far easier to shape. Plant it in ceramic containers or raised beds if your soil is dry or hard. Give it sun, but not full exposure. Let it touch the wind, but not be thrashed by it. And never plant it in a straight line unless your only goal is boundary definition. Curved or staggered planting reflects the natural world more accurately and supports the flow of qi rather than cutting it. In this way, bamboo becomes not just a filter, but a channel. It does not merely intercept energy, it guides it. It teaches the house how to move forward gently, deliberately, with integrity. Symbolically, bamboo also supports the quality of Wu Wei in Taoist and Buddhist teachings, non-forced action, action that arises from natural alignment. When you observe a well-grown bamboo grove, you'll notice it doesn't resist gravity, it grows with it. It doesn't challenge wind, it joins it. And yet, it stands its ground. It lives long, it returns after storm. This is why, even after typhoons or earthquakes, bamboo forests are often the first to recover. Not because they are unshaken, but because they are unhardened. There is no brittleness to snap. This lesson applies directly to the emotional field of the household. Families break not when they are weak, but when they are rigid. Relationships fracture not from difference, but from inflexibility. Children rebel not from freedom, but from the absence of gentle boundaries. Bamboo models the antidote: firm yet forgiving, upright yet fluid, consistent but open. So if your home has been feeling unfocused, if your work life has momentum but no flow, if your family dynamics seem reactive, or if you simply feel like your energy enters the world faster than you can replenish it, plant bamboo. Not just as a backdrop, but as a teacher. Watch how it leans into the wind. Watch how it whispers in silence. Watch how it grows, unhurried, unapologetic, unconcerned with bloom, yet unmistakably alive. Let it show you how to rise quietly. Let it shape the way you structure your days, your intentions, your life. And finally, honor it. Don't let it become overgrown or dry. Prune it with care, not haste. Remove dead stalks, not because they are ugly, but because they block the flow. Place a small stone altar near it if you wish, not for ritual, but for attention. Let your presence with the bamboo be part of your discipline. Let your tending of it mirror your tending of self. And in time, you will find that this simple plant, this hollow green pillar, has done something no conversation or self-help book could. It has reminded you how to hold your spine straight, how to bend when needed, and how to keep growing even when no one is watching. Tree 5 Fiddle Leaf Fig, Urban Karma Stabilizer. Among all the trees that have found their way into modern homes, few are as quietly transformative as the fiddle leaf fig. Often seen as a trendy interior choice in stylish apartments and creative studios, it's easy to dismiss this plant as another aesthetic fad, a decorative statement meant for photo backdrops or design magazines. But beneath its broad, glossy leaves and upright structure lies an unexpectedly profound energetic function, one that speaks directly to the spiritual and practical challenges of modern urban living. The fiddle leaf fig is not just a beautiful object. It is, when placed with awareness and cared for with rhythm, a stabilizer of scattered energy in environments where traditional grounding sources, like open land, flowing water, or expansive gardens, are absent. In Feng Shui, we often speak about the landforms around a house, the protective mountain at the rear, the welcoming phoenix at the front, the dragon and tiger embracing the sides. But what happens when your home is stacked in a high-rise, wedged between concrete walls surrounded by steel and static? What happens when the earth beneath your feet is 30 stories below and your window looks not onto nature, but onto movement, glass, noise, and artificial light? This is where the fiddle leaf fig enters, not as a substitute for earth, but as a bridge between the missing ground and your overstimulated life. It is a plant made for the in-between. Its large, violin-shaped leaves stretch upward as if yearning for sky, but they do not droop, scatter, or spiral. They hold their form like a prayer, wide, calm, intentional. Each leaf acts as a small, energetic surface, absorbing chaos, refracting light, softening the emotional noise that accumulates in tight spaces and fast environments. This function is not imagined, it is felt. People who keep healthy fiddle leaf figs often describe feeling more emotionally centered, less prone to agitation, more able to think clearly when moving through their home, even if their schedule outside that home is nonstop. In Buddhist reflection, the cycle of birth, death, and rebirth is not a superstition. It is the central lens through which reality is viewed. Everything arises, changes, and fades. Nothing clings, nothing remains fixed. And yet, in our modern lives, we resist this truth at every turn. We attempt to pause time with routines, freeze moments with photos, resist loss with control, or inflate success to avoid decline. In this tension between what is and what we demand it to be, stress accumulates. The fiddle leaf fig, simply by existing in our space, reminds us of impermanence in the gentlest way possible. Its leaves do not bloom with flash or fall with drama. They shift slowly, subtly, showing the passage of time not through spectacle, but through quiet growth. You will notice, if you truly live with a fiddle leaf, that one day a new leaf unfurls, soft, lighter in color, trembling slightly. Over days it darkens, strengthens, takes its place. And over months, an older leaf near the base begins to wither. Not suddenly, not tragically, but naturally, gracefully, as if making room for what is next. This slow dance between growth and release becomes a lesson in how to live with change. It becomes a mirror to the way energy flows through our days, our thoughts, our relationships, our bodies. For those living under constant pressure, whether professional, emotional, or social, the fiddle leaf fig does not provide escape. It provides a steady vibration that helps integrate pressure without collapse. Its energy is vertical, like the spine. When placed correctly, ideally near the rear interior corner of a room or along the back wall in a high-traffic apartment, it provides a kind of energetic exhale, a weight that pulls your attention downward without causing heaviness. It becomes an anchor in the middle of chaos. This is why it's particularly beneficial for people in high-performance roles. Entrepreneurs, doctors, executives, artists, whose daily output requires constant decision-making and emotional regulation. Unlike flowering plants that demand constant change or vines that creep and pull, the fiddle leaf stays centered. It grows upward. It teaches restraint. It reminds its keeper to breathe before reacting, to listen before speaking, to pause before rushing. It encourages stillness, not as inactivity, but as the moment from which right action arises. This is, in essence, the principle of samadhi, concentration, not through effort, but through presence. And while the fiddle leaf fig is not a teacher in the traditional sense, it radiates the environment in which internal teaching can occur. Its practicality should also not be underestimated. Despite its dramatic appearance, the fiddle leaf fig is not difficult to care for once you understand its rhythm. It wants light but not burning sun, moisture but not soggy roots, a stable position but not stagnation. Like the middle path of Buddhist teaching, it thrives in balance. Give it too much attention, moving it, watering it erratically, fussing with its placement, and it will resist. Give it too little and it will slowly decline. But find that middle zone of care where consistency and attention meet without control, and it will reward you with beauty that deepens rather than distracts. This mirrors the way we should treat our inner life, not suppressing emotions, not indulging them, but tending to them with consistency, clarity, and a willingness to witness their rhythm without trying to force outcomes. In this way, the fiddle leaf fig becomes more than decor. It becomes a partner in your space, a participant in your unfolding story, a silent reminder that growth is not measured by how much you do, but by how well you respond to the conditions you are in. In urban Feng Shui, where traditional landforms are unavailable, objects and plants become the new landscape. A bookshelf becomes your mountain. A mirror becomes your water. A hallway becomes your river. And the fiddle leaf fig becomes your earth, your grounding, your breath, your calm in the storm. It is one of the few trees that can be placed indoors and still function as an energetic stabilizer. This makes it invaluable for apartments, condos, shared living spaces, or even windowless rooms where outside connection is minimal. For those who meditate, placing a fiddle leaf fig near your practice space deepens the field. Its vertical energy holds the spine from the outside while you sit. It absorbs the scattered thought patterns you release during stillness. It keeps the space energetically clean without intrusion. And unlike incense or sound tools, it does not activate, it contains, it holds. Emotionally, the fiddle leaf fig helps those navigating cycles of reinvention. Divorcees rebuilding their lives. Entrepreneurs closing one business to begin another. Young adults leaving family homes to discover their path. Retirees shedding identity to discover purpose beyond productivity. In these liminal spaces, the human mind often searches for anchors that are not codependent. It wants reassurance without conversation. It seeks presence without performance. And the fiddle leaf fig provides that. It says, in its very form, you can change and still be whole. You can lose and still stand tall. You can begin again and still carry beauty. From a placement perspective, this tree is best positioned in areas where energy feels depleted or undefined. Corners of rooms where dust collects, near doors that face energetic pushback, or along walls where personal presence tends to shrink. It should never be shoved into tight spaces. Let its leaves reach, let it breathe. Clean the leaves weekly, not just for dust removal, but as an act of reset. As you wipe them, imagine yourself clearing the fog of a long day. Whisper something if it helps. No one needs to hear. The fig listens, and with time, you will feel the difference. The space will hum lower. Your breath will deepen as you enter the room. Things will still go wrong in life. The fig will not prevent hardship. but it will help you hold your hardship with more dignity, more spaciousness, more patience, and in the end, perhaps that is the highest service a tree can provide in the modern age. Not to change your fate, but to hold your center while you navigate it. The fiddle leaf fig does not pretend to be sacred, but when placed with care and seen with reverence, it becomes sacred by function. It becomes your partner in impermanence, your anchor in transition, your quiet mirror when everything else is asking you to shout. A lesson from Steve Jobs' garden. There are moments in history when a single private act mirrors a much deeper truth, an insight so subtle that it almost escapes notice, yet so structurally powerful that it echoes through every visible outcome that follows. One such moment exists quietly in the story of Steve Jobs and the bamboo that stood behind his house. Known for his devotion to design integrity, his fascination with Zen Buddhism, and his obsession with the unseen elegance behind every product Apple created, Jobs was not a man who took space lightly. He understood that environment wasn't just where you lived, it was part of who you became. In the early 2000s, as he retreated periodically from the chaos of Silicon Valley to his private residence, Jobs enlisted the help of a traditional Japanese garden designer to bring intention and order to his home landscape. It wasn't for luxury, it wasn't for display, it was for function, the kind of function invisible to the eye but deeply felt in the psyche. During their collaboration, the designer observed that the rear of Jobs' home was too exposed, too open, too unanchored. The rear wall, the energetic black tortoise known in Feng Shui terms, offered no resistance, no retention, no structure to hold the qi that naturally passed through the property. The designer, rooted in centuries of landscape spiritual philosophy, didn't recommend walls or sculptures or dramatic hedges. He recommended bamboo, not just a plant, not a statement piece, but a long, sloping, quiet forest of upright green. Not arranged in a hedge, not planted for shade, but staggered in a way that allowed air to breathe between the stalks while still forming a gentle, energetic barrier. The goal, he explained, was to catch the thoughts, to prevent the creative essence from bleeding out the back of the home, to hold Steve's inner vision from scattering into the maze of the outer world. And Jobs didn't debate this advice. He listened, he understood, he planted. What followed in the years after this seemingly humble act was not just personal peace, but the reawakening of a dormant creative force within him that would transform the world. The iPod, iTunes, the rebirth of Apple as not just a company, but a cultural movement. These were not the result of bamboo, of course, but the bamboo was part of the environment that allowed such clarity, momentum, and alignment to reemerge. It became a silent partner in his most pivotal decade, not because it gave him ideas, but because it held the field in which his mind could hear itself think. That is the unseen truth of intentional planning. That is the metaphysical function of design that honors energy. Whether or not you believe in qi, whether or not you study Feng Shui, whether or not you subscribe to metaphysical models of architecture, the fact remains that those who achieve sustained greatness often pay attention to what others ignore. They shape their space to reflect the mental climate they wish to cultivate. They do not wait for focus to arrive. They build the conditions under which focus becomes inevitable. Jobs was a master of detail, of flow, of integration. He demanded that the inside of a computer look as elegant as the outside, that the circuit boards reflect the same care as the casing, even if no one would ever see them. So it is no surprise that he valued the unseen parts of his home in the same way. The back of the house, to him, wasn't an afterthought. It was part of the operating system. It was a structural line of code. And when it lacked order, he installed order, not with steel or concrete, but with nature, with bamboo, with the one plant that perfectly mirrored the qualities he so revered in design: simplicity, uprightness, flexibility, restraint. strength without aggression. Bamboo didn't just fill the rear wall of his garden. It became a metaphor for how he wanted his thoughts to function. Straight, clean, aligned, fast-growing, but empty in the middle. Empty like Zen. Empty like the center of a perfect idea, waiting to be filled with just the right form. The bamboo behind his house became a living interface connecting mind to matter, inner process to outer product. And that's why this story matters. Not because Jobs was famous, not because bamboo is magical, but because it reminds us that behind every forward-facing success, there is usually a backward-facing support. Something placed with care, something that does not shine but holds. The rear wall is never in the photographs. It's not in the interviews. It doesn't get remembered. But it is always part of the story. And this truth applies not just to architecture, but to life. If your thoughts scatter before becoming actions, if your ideas seem brilliant but evaporate under pressure, if your life feels full of motion but short on anchoring, the issue might not be you. It might be what's behind you or what isn't. Look to your rear wall. Look to the energy that escapes you before you can use it. Ask yourself, is your space catching your thoughts or letting them drift into the noise? Is there something behind you physically, emotionally, spiritually, that holds your momentum? Or are you building brilliance on a foundation that can't hold shape? Bamboo, in its quiet resilience, offers an answer. It does not need to be loud to be effective. It does not need to flower to create meaning. It simply needs to be placed with clarity and grown with trust. Jobs trusted, he planted. And from that decision, his space became more than a home. It became a harbor, a spine, a container for greatness. And you, whether you live in a mansion or a modest apartment, have the same opportunity to place with care, to plant with intention, to remember that the fortune of a house is not just in its square footage or front-facing elegance. It's in what holds you when you are not performing. It's in what steadies you when no one is watching. It's in the things you plant behind you so your energy can finally stay. Mistakes to avoid when planting in the rear. There is a quiet danger in treating a garden like a gallery, in seeing the land behind your home as nothing more than a canvas for visual pleasure. A well-placed tree can change your life, but a poorly chosen one, planted without awareness of energy, intention, or alignment, can unravel the very balance you're trying to build. The back of your home is not a decoration zone. It is your energetic spine, your karmic anchor, the foundation upon which the rhythm of your household rests. And just like the body can be thrown into misalignment by a poorly supported back, the soul of your home can be destabilized by careless planting. The mistakes made behind the house are often invisible at first. They do not always announce themselves in physical clutter or broken branches. They show up instead in emotional stagnation, in decision fatigue, in opportunities that seem to evaporate without warning, in family members who argue without knowing why, in moods that shift unpredictably, and in luck that feels like it comes in waves, high and brilliant, then gone. One of the most common and energetically disruptive mistakes is planting trees too close to the rear wall of the home. From a design standpoint, this might seem appealing. A tall, elegant tree hugging the fence creates the illusion of privacy and density, but in energetic terms, that closeness compresses chi, suffocates airflow, and limits the root's natural expansion, both physically and metaphysically. When roots have nowhere to stretch, the tree becomes stunted, and so too does the energy field it's meant to stabilize. Worse, the trapped moisture against the wall can lead to mold, decay, or stagnation, manifesting physically as poor drainage and spiritually as blocked fortune. Space is not just emptiness, it is breath. And the back of your home needs to exhale. It needs at least a few feet between structure and tree so the flow of energy can circulate without pressure, without panic, without the subtle anxiety that arises when there's no room to grow. Another major mistake is the use of thorny or aggressive species, trees with spikes, tangled branches, or erratic leaf fall. These are not inherently bad plants, but in the wrong placement, they introduce discord in qi. In Buddhist terms, they invite samsaric energy, confusion, distraction, sharp reactivity. Trees like cacti, acacia, or anything with irregular movement or jagged presence are best reserved for outer boundaries or used with extreme awareness. When placed behind the house, especially close to main windows or sleeping areas, they often create energetic friction. People may experience restless sleep, difficulty concentrating, or feel as if their home is more draining than nourishing. And while some may dismiss this as psychological suggestion, those who study energy flow know better. Qi follows shape. It flows with softness. It bounces off hardness. When your rear garden becomes a battlefield of edges, the spirit of the home cannot rest. It remains on guard, always defending, never receiving. If you feel like you can't relax, even in stillness, even in silence, look behind you. Look at what you have planted. Look at what your back is facing. Does it calm or does it agitate? The final and perhaps most common mistake is planting only for aesthetics. This is the subtle trap of modern landscaping. We're shown images of perfect gardens, manicured lawns, curated trees and white pebbled corners, curated Instagram-worthy jungles that look lush but feel hollow. But beauty without purpose is decoration, and in spiritual architecture, decoration without function is noise. Every plant, every tree, every placement in your rear garden must serve a purpose first. Its beauty should emerge from its alignment, not override it. When homeowners choose trees for their trend value rather than their energy value, they often unknowingly introduce conflict. A tree might be beautiful but have roots that damage pipes. Its leaves may glisten but fall so frequently that they invite fatigue and maintenance. Its shape may appeal, but its energy may be too yang, too aggressive for a space that needs softness. The result is visual pleasure with karmic disturbance. The garden looks alive but feels unsettled, and this confusion often seeps into the daily life of the household. Projects begin but don't complete. Peace is felt but doesn't last. Guests arrive but stay too long or not long enough. The energy has no clarity. The space is lovely, but it doesn't hold. This is why we return again and again to the core principle: form follows function. Plant for energy first, then for aesthetics. Ask yourself what your home needs before deciding what your eye craves. Is your household emotionally sensitive? Choose trees that ground. Is your household intellectually active but scattered? Choose trees that clarify. Are you starting a new chapter? New marriage, new business, new life? Choose trees that stabilize and gently lift. And always, always match your choice with your land's actual condition. Don't plant tropical trees in dry, shaded corners. Don't force evergreens into cramped balconies. Respect the nature of the land. Align your choice with its truth. In Buddhism, we are reminded again and again, nothing thrives without the right causes and conditions. Even the lotus, for all its sacred beauty, cannot bloom in clean water. It needs the murk, the mud, the texture of imperfection to rise. And so it is with your trees. They will not serve you because they are perfect. They will serve you because they are right. Right for your space, your energy, your karma. And this is why we do not plant for show. We plant for growth. Growth that may not be seen on day one or even year one, but growth that roots deeply, subtly changing the way your household breathes, the way your mind rests, the way your life unfolds. So as you walk the rear of your home, look not at what pleases the eye. Look at what the space asks for. Is there too much noise? Choose quiet. Too much exposure? Choose protection. Too much stagnation? Choose movement. Let the back of your home become not a Pinterest board, but a prayer, a living composition of clarity, containment, and care. And in doing so, you will avoid not only aesthetic mistakes, but karmic ones. You will step into the role of steward, not decorator, and that small shift will echo through everything your home holds from this day forward. Final. We often imagine wealth as something we pursue, something ahead of us, waiting to be unlocked through effort, strategy, ambition. We think if we add just one more project, one more course, one more idea to our days, the doors will finally open. But in the language of Feng Shui and in the heart of Buddhist understanding, true wealth doesn't begin with movement. It begins with stillness. It doesn't arrive because you added more. It arrives because you removed what was scattered, chaotic, and unanchored. It begins when your foundation becomes strong enough to hold what you already have. The back of your home is not a performance stage. It's not where you entertain or impress. It's not what the world sees, but it is where your life gathers. It is where your karma rests. It is where your energy either leaks or roots when that rear space is neglected, empty, dry, overgrown, forgotten. Your fortune, no matter how hard you work, often refuses to stay. And when it is tended, gently, wisely, with quiet discipline, it becomes the silent guardian of everything you build. So now, with no urgency, just honesty, ask yourself what stands behind your home. Is it a living force that protects your family line, or just a wall that ends the conversation? Is there something there that breathes with you, that receives the weight of your life without demand, that holds your vision while you rest? Or is there nothing at all? And if the answer unsettles you, that's not a judgment, that's a beginning. That's the moment when space turns into support, when awareness becomes a kind of wealth on its own. Because alignment doesn't happen when you decorate. It happens when you listen to the land, to the walls, to the trees, to the parts of your home that speak without words, but shape your days in ways no voice ever could. The most powerful change you can make today may not be adding another thing to your schedule, your investment list, or your vision board. It might be as simple as standing barefoot in your backyard, looking at the earth behind your house, and asking, what do I want this space to hold for me, for my children, for the version of myself I haven't even met yet? And from that question, the right tree will appear, the right shape, the right season, the right anchor for everything ahead. If this video helped you see your space differently, if it offered you not a new trend, but an ancient remembering, I gently invite you to support this journey. Leave a comment below about what you're planting behind your home, behind your life. Subscribe to New Day Mindfulness so I can keep bringing you stories and teachings that don't chase superstition, but build from the truth your ancestors wished you'd one day understand. And if there's someone you love, someone building a home, rebuilding a life, or simply looking for more than luck, share this video with them. Let them see that wealth doesn't always come from forward motion. Sometimes it comes from behind. Sometimes it grows where no one is looking, but where everything depends. And when you plant with that knowing, you're not just changing a backyard, you're changing your lineage.